You're lying in bed. It's 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. The house is quiet, the lights are off, and the only thing illuminating your face is the cold blue light of your phone. You open your banking app, that little ritual of anxiety we all perform, and there it is. For the first time in your life, the comma is in the right place. 5 digits. $10,000. Your heart does a little somersault. You've been grinding for this. You've skipped the concerts, you've ignored the new phone itch, and you've eaten enough generic brand beans to qualify as a legal gas hazard. You feel like a winner. You feel safe for about 4 seconds. Then the catch kicks in. Suddenly, your brain, which has been in survival mode for years, decides to throw a party. It whispers, "Hey, we have 10 grand. That means we can finally afford that $800 monthly payment on the truck you don't need." Simultaneously, the world around you seems to sense the shift in your bank balance. Your car, which has been perfectly fine for 3 years, suddenly develops a mysterious clunking sound in the transmission. Your check engine light flickers like a predatory beacon. Your email inbox is suddenly flooded with exclusive offers for travel cards and pre-approved personal loans. Hitting that number feels like you finally crossed the finish line of a marathon, but here's the reality. You didn't finish the race. You just reached the part of the track where they stop giving out water and start throwing bricks at your head. The rules of the game just changed, and if you don't change your habits right now, the system is going to claw every single cent of that 10 grand back into its pockets before the month is over. Most people hit a milestone, take a breath, and immediately lose it, because hitting the number is phase 1. Keeping it, that's where the system breaks you. The problem isn't that you're bad with money. The problem is that the entire world is engineered to make sure you never stay stable for too long. Think of your finances like a roller coaster. For most of us, we spend months or years slowly clicking up the tracks, saving, scraping, sacrificing. We finally reach the peak, we see the view for one glorious second, and then, whoosh! A medical bill, a necessary lifestyle upgrade, or a sudden urge to reward ourselves sends us screaming back down to zero. We treat our bank balance like a finish line when we should be treating it like a foundation. A finish line is something you cross and then stop. A foundation is something you build on so you don't sink into the mud. According to the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency with cash. Think about that. We're living in a system where almost half the population is one flat tire away from financial ruin. And the system loves that. It thrives on it. When you're broke, you're predictable. You're forced to take the high-interest loan. You're forced to pay the convenience fees. You're forced to stay in the job you hate because the alternative is starvation. Being broke is the most expensive way to live in the United States, and that is not an accident. It is a feature. You aren't broken. Your brain isn't defective. You're just playing a game where the house always has the edge. But today, we're going to look at the deck. My name is Isaac Paul, and I am obsessed with how money actually works. Not the buy my course and get rich in 3 days version, but the messy, frustrating reality of the system we actually live in. Before we go any further, the mandatory fine print. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I don't know your life, your debts, or your weird obsession with collecting vintage taxidermy. I'm just a guy who looks at data and sees the traps. Before you make any major moves, consult a professional who actually has a license and a much more expensive desk than mine. Now, let's talk about why your habits are currently designed to keep you at zero. There are 2 phases to building wealth. Phase 1 is the grind. This is where you're just trying to get your head above water. It's about raw discipline. It's about saying no to everything. But phase 2, the phase where you actually have a little bit of money, is much more dangerous. Why? Because phase 2 is emotional. When you're at zero, the motivation is fear. You save because you don't want to be homeless. But when you have $10,000 or $20,000, the fear goes away and is replaced with justified reward syndrome. You tell yourself, "I've worked so hard for this. I deserve a nice dinner. I deserve that new couch. I deserve a car that doesn't smell like old gym socks. The system counts on this. Banks don't make money from the people who are truly broke. They make money from the people who are stable enough to be granted credit. Once you hit a certain milestone, the predatory offers change. They stop sending you payday loan flyers and start sending you platinum rewards cards with 24% interest rates. They want you to feel successful so that you'll spend like a successful person. They want you to trade your freedom for the appearance of it. The system is tuned so that most people never wander too far from the just enough to survive zone. If you have too little, you can't participate in the economy. If you have too much, you stop being a servant to it. The sweet spot for the system is someone who makes $80,000 a year but spends $82,000. That $2,000 gap is where the banks live. That's their profit margin. Your habit of rewarding yourself is exactly how they keep that gap open. Let's look at the math, because numbers don't have emotions, and they don't care about your Treat Yourself Tuesday. If you take that $10,000 milestone and you do what most people do, which is put it in a high-yield savings account earning 0.5%, or let's be generous and say 4% in a good year, you're barely keeping up with inflation. In fact, if inflation is 5% and your bank is paying you 4%, you are literally paying the bank 1% a year for the privilege of holding your money. That is the wealth tax no one calls a tax. Now, let's look at the alternative. If you fix your habits and move that money into a boring, low-cost index fund that tracks the S&P 500, history suggests an average return of around 7 to 10% over the long haul. That's $100,000 for doing absolutely nothing. But here's the catch. To get that $100,000, you have to ignore the $10,000 today. You have to ignore the check engine light trap by having a separate emergency fund. You have to ignore the upgrade trap. Vanguard recently released a report on investor behavior, and the behavior gap is staggering. The average investor earns significantly less than the funds they invest in. Why? Because they panic and sell when things look bad, or they withdraw a little to pay for a vacation. They treat their investment like a piggy bank instead of a tree. A piggy bank you have to break to use. A tree you have to leave alone to grow. Let me tell you about Alex and Jordan. They both work at the same tech firm. They both got a $15,000 bonus this year. Alex hit the number and felt the phase 2 itch. Alex decided that because they were now a 5-digit person, they couldn't be seen driving a 2015 Honda Civic. Alex took that $15,000, used it as a down payment on a $55,000 Audi, and signed up for a $750 monthly payment. Alex looks rich. Alex feels rich. But Alex is now more stressed than ever because that $750 payment means they cannot miss a single day of work. Alex is more of a slave to the system now than when they were broke. Then there's Jordan. Jordan kept the Civic. Jordan took that $15,000 and did something incredibly boring. They put $5,000 into a floor, an emergency fund they promised never to touch, and put the other $10,000 into a brokerage account. Jordan doesn't look any different. Jordan still eats the same generic beans, but Jordan just bought something Alex didn't. Options. 3 years later, the company has layoffs. Alex is in a full-blown panic because the Audi payment is due and the bank doesn't care about market conditions. Jordan, however, looks at their account. That $10,000 has grown. They have a 6-month cushion. Jordan isn't stressed. Jordan can take their time finding a better job. Jordan used the money to buy their freedom. Alex used the money to buy a fancy cage. The stats from the Federal Reserve and various consumer debt reports show that the Alex story is the standard American experience. We are a nation of high-income, broke people. We have the fancy kitchen and the 70-inch TV, but we are terrified of a $1,000 repair bill. So how do you fix it? How do you make sure the system doesn't break you once you finally start winning? Here is the 7-step playbook to fix your habits ASAP. Set a floor, not a finish line. Decide on a number, let's say $5,000, that is your new zero. If your bank account hits $5,000, you are broke. You don't touch it, you don't borrow from it, it doesn't exist. This is your insurance against the system's traps. The 48-hour rule. Anything over $100 that isn't a bill requires a 48-hour waiting period. The system relies on impulse. If you wait 48 hours, the phase 2 dopamine hit wears off, and you usually realize you don't actually want the thing. Be suspicious of stability. When your credit score goes up and banks start offering you more, realize they aren't doing it because they like you. They are doing it because you are now a more profitable target. Treat a pre-approved credit card offer like a phishing scam. Kill the deserve logic. You don't deserve a luxury item because you worked hard. You deserve freedom. Every time you say, I deserve